The expedition preparation, that's the whole programme that I've just been discussing. The flights and all the in-country costs, of course, expedition group equipment, of which there is a considerable amount, as you would expect, and I'll describe some of the more chunky bits of kit that will be in a little while. Medical insurance, and again I'll refer back to the Expedition Providers Association and that Learning Outside the Classroom, that quality badge. All those companies, the 7 companies that I mentioned, they all have to sign up to a particular and comprehensive insurance package. And anyone wanting to either see key facts or the full policy, please just email me on my email address on the bottom of the application form, and I can send you as much information on the insurance as you would want. You can imagine what kind of insurance policies you have. Training. So the training weekend generally runs from sort of Friday evening, Friday afternoon at some point, through to Sunday lunchtime. Now, we design the training weekend around the itinerary. So it's quite important that we get this kind of sort of concept going, whereby the planning and the research is the sort of front-loaded part of the programme, of the process. And once we've developed that and we've got an understanding of what the project is, for example, whether it's community-based, Rick Ovens, for example, or whether it's more culturally based, or indeed whether it's environmentally based, again, Rick Ovens perhaps. And once we've designed the itinerary and we've got an idea of the itinerary, we can then start to look at training needs analysis with the girls and design a training package to make sure that they get exactly what they deserve to get out of that itinerary that they put together. And that's really important. So the training weekend really is bespoke to the itinerary. There are some generic things that are put across, of course, health and hygiene, health and safety, group dynamics, act for leadership, and that kind of stuff generally is a sort of a generic thing that gets put across. But there are some specific things that will fall out of the itinerary, some specific training needs that we'll include into that training weekend. Leaders are a really important part of the expedition, of course, notwithstanding Paul, who is already a trained expedition leader and qualified in leading expeditions such as this. And again, we will put, if needs be, depending on the school staff and the ratios and so on and so forth, we'll put a male or female technical leader in place to help Paul out and in terms of just numbers and dynamic of the team and the leadership profile to make sure that is right and proper and all in place. Safety and backup, I'll talk in some depth now. Safety and backup, that's what I live and breathe, of course, being the operations director. Team training is part of that safety and backup, and part of the training we talk about risk assessments, we do some scenarios and so on and so forth. So it is a big part of it. It's down to the girls, primarily, just in small part perhaps, but to take on some of the responsibility of the safety of the team. Certainly as individuals and certainly looking after each other, and that flavour should come across right the way through. A recce, we do recce all our projects, of course, and our destinations. We generally carry out 2 reconnaissance, or 2 recces. One quite early to get the concept going, and then one sort of a detailed recce where it's looking at this specific project site perhaps and specific sort of activities that the teams might want to do. Qualified and experienced leaders, and I've already alluded to them, but in essence, I require a number of things from a leader before I will allow them to lead one of our teams. Firstly, they are all qualified mountain leader assessed. And the difference between mountain leader trained and mountain leader assessed is about sort of 2 years in the mountains, 2 years not permanently in the mountains because that would just be weird, but 2 years over seasons in the mountains, and then you go on your assessment. They're all required to be remote medical trained, and obviously I'm a medical trainer, as is Tom, so we deliver that to our leaders. And they all must have experience of working with young people in the environment that they're about to lead in, and in this context it would be Vietnam or Southeast Asia. Once they've got that, and I'm satisfied that they have that, I then look at their personality and how they interact with the teams. And I do that by virtue of an assessment or an observation where I bring a leader in to a particular team, not at this stage the team that they'll be leading, but another team, and I watch and observe and mentor slightly if needs be, until I'm satisfied that they're good to go as far as leading a team is concerned. The one thing I just simply say to myself is, I have 2 daughters of a similar age to yours, slightly older now, and if I, hand on heart, will say I would sign that person up to lead my daughters anywhere in the world. I wouldn't want to lead my youngest, it would just be carnage. But if I can hand on heart and say that I would be happy for them to lead my 2 daughters, then I would hope that that's good enough for parents that I'm talking to in this it's quite an important part of the book. Comprehensive insurance we've spoken about, and again, please do email me if you require any information on that. Country and activity-specific risk assessments. The risk assessments are vast, as you can imagine. There are a number of levels of risk assessment, primarily three. The expedition generic risk assessment, which is just a risk assessment 40 pages deep about expeditions and control measures putting in place and so on and so forth. Then there's the destination-specific risk assessment, in this context it would be Vietnam, and there's an activity risk assessment as well, particular to the particular activities as they're going through the expedition itself. So for R&R, for example, for trekking, for the project and so on and so forth. Finally, of course, and most importantly, we have the dynamic risk assessment. It's not on there, but the dynamic risk assessment is done by everybody, in actual fact, looking after yourself and others whilst on expedition. Primarily, the technical leader is responsible for the dynamic risk assessment. Medical plan. At each phase, the leader, teachers, indeed the students themselves, the girls, will be able to have some view of and sight of a medical plan, and in that medical plan will detail the nearest primary and secondary care facility throughout the whole expedition at particular phases. It will detail the route to get to that particular primary or secondary care facility, how long it's going to take them, and the best method of travel, and that might be by 4x4, it might be by foot, it might be by donkey, it might be by any manner of any way you need at all. But it'll be detailed in that particular medical plan. So that if something does happen and something occurs, or there's an ailment or illness, that the leader feels the need to seek in-country medical advice, there will be the information that he or she will require will be in that medical plan. We also use a medical assistant agency, and we currently use Specialty Assist. Primarily, they are the top of their game. They're the guys that deal with all the NGOs working overseas, the BBC, and so on and so forth. So if we do need international support, medical evacuations back to the UK, and so on and so forth, those are the guys that we'll engage with to get that sorted. In the UK, we have a 24-hour operations room, obviously, supporting the expeditions going out. As soon as the first expedition goes out, no matter, we open that operations room, and it's manned 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. There are two levels to the operations room. One is administrative, it's run quite similar to a military operations room in many ways. It would be with myself and Mike in the background. We have two levels. One is an administrative level of operational support, and that's lost passports, money budgeting and the like. And then we have an emergency level, which is manned by myself or Mike. If a leader requires to speak to somebody that can make decisions, he or she knows that he or she can call directly back to the UK, either by satellite phone, they all carry satellite phones, mobile phone, of course, or indeed any means possible, straight back to the UK and talk to myself and Mike and make decisions. We also, of course, have True Events medical advisor, Dr. Raj Joshi, throughout the summer. So again, if the leader decides, or indeed any of the team needs to decide that they need to talk something through with a doctor, we can satellite phone back to the option room, pass through to Raj, talk to the leader, and talk to the expedition and get things sorted. We do have satellite communications. I've already alluded to the satellite phone, a really important piece of kit. It relies on satellite communications, not a mobile device, doesn't rely on mobile talk-throughs, land-based mobile networks, doesn't rely on anything like that, but straight up satellite communications back to the UK. You could phone landline, mobile, anywhere in any landline or mobile in the UK from anywhere in Vietnam. Trackers we also use, and the trackers are a great bit of kit. It's moved on massively in the last few years. We track all our expeditions. This is pretty bad page print on this, so I do apologise. That's Hoi An in central Vietnam. This is up into the central highlands in Vietnam. This is a team from last year. And what this means is that we can give parents and friends and families and the school and so on the URL. And you put that into Google search and up it comes, and you get a dedicated web page on our website, of course, which you can follow the expedition. And it would be fantastic actually in Vietnam because it sparks off every 4 hours. And over the 1,500 kilometres north to south, you'll get a real flavour for that journey as you're watching your daughters going, moving from north to south, doing various activities. And it's a great way of interacting for those guys back home who are not quite as lucky as the young girls that may be going out there. But it does give an element of interaction for friends and family. There's a number of other things that tracker gives us in terms of the option, and we can manipulate and manufacture things with that tracker. We can send texts to it, we can change it from 4 hours to 1 minute tracking if we need to. We can do all sorts of things with that based in the UK, sending a signal to the tracker to do what we want it to do. So it is a really good bit of kit, and it's proved really, really successful and quite popular, actually, with all the parents and friends and stuff. That's the presentation on Vietnam for 2015. Please, as I say, ask any questions you see fit to do so. Only remaining for me to say really is that I think, Paul, you're going to take in any applications on the 14th of October.
Yeah.